Hello everybody, it's James here with Storytime with Dutch Mantell. I'll do some plugs first. One, I've wrote a book about Owen Hart, it's on Amazon. And two, I've wrote a book about The Rock, it's on Amazon. Dutch Mantell, do you have any books for sale?
Funny you brought that up. I do have two books. They're also for sale on Amazon. The World Dutch, according to Dutch. You can find it on Amazon. And I have another one. It's called Tales from a Dirt Road. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Tales from a Dirt Road. And if you like stories, that's all these books are. It's just an accumulation of stories that I learned from old timers through the years, going up and down the roads. And sometimes I'm surprised, I'm amazed at what you can learn just by listening. You know, I would ride with these old timers, and it'd be hot summertime, and I'd be the driver, and they'd stop and get some beer, and they'd drink about 2 beers, and then they'd want to start talking. Then I would start asking questions, and here come the stories. Because we probably have 2 guys in the back, so this kind of entertained us as we made our way down the highway with some great stories. I wish I could really, I wrote them pretty well. I detailed them, documented them very well. But just hearing those stories, that's when my school started in professional wrestling. They said, "Did you go to school for this?" I said, "School? No, I went to work." So when I got, and my schooling would start about 11 o'clock every night. We left to town. And we'd back, and they would tell me these stories.
How long did it take for you to write the books? Because for me, it took me, some points I was working 70 hours a week, and like on the first one, I think 10 months, something like that. It was a real slog. No.
This one here, the World According to Dutch, what I was doing, I was actually writing the stories, and I was putting them on Facebook. I was just putting them on there just to get fan response, and they loved them. So I said, "You should do a book." I said, "Oh, well, yeah." But I'd never really thought about it. But I wrote this one in 5 weeks.
Oh, really?
But I had about half of them written. Then I went and wrote some more. And in this book, so I'll tell you what's in this one. It's, let me just read some of the chapters in it. It's The Tale of the Stinking Indian. Tremendous story. Savage meets a police dog. True story. Puerto Rico, the war. It was a war my first year down there. And then Wrestling Bears. Oh, I actually wrestled a bear.
We've talked about it on this show. You wrestled Ginger.
Yeah, the Andy Kaufman story with Lawler. That's in here from what and I found out something about that. I was listening to them, Lawler. I just did a TV show. It's called, you remember Dark Side of the Ring?
Yes, I do, yeah.
They're coming out with another one called The Territories. And we did Memphis. So I saw Lawler and Jerry Jarrett, Jeff Jarrett there, and Jimmy Hart. And they were talking about Kaufman, and I found out something that I didn't know, because I thought it was the most brilliantly booked angle, but it wasn't an angle. It just turned into an angle. They never intended for this to go 3 months and 4 months. Bits and pieces of it. It just happened. You remember when Lawler gave him the pile driver?
I've seen the original. I've seen the Man on the Moon version and everything, yeah.
Well, Kaufman was laying in the ring and he wouldn't get up. So Lawler said I was giving him time to get up, but he wouldn't get up. He called the referee over. He said, "Tell Andy to get up." So he went and told Andy, "Get up." And Andy said something. He went back to Lawler. The referee told Jerry Calhoun, the referee told Lawler, he said he's not getting up. "Why not?" He said he's hurt. He said, "You tell that son of a bitch, if he don't get up, I'm gonna give him something that's gonna hurt. Tell him to get his ass out of there." And he went back and he said something else to Andy. And he came back and he said, Andy said he wants an ambulance. He said, "I ain't damn paying an ambulance to come pick his little sorry ass up. The Lawler was getting hot because it's going to cost him money. So he went back and told Andy that. Andy says, tell him I'll pay for it. So he went back and told Lawler, said, Andy says he'll pay for it. He said, well, hell, call him, I guess. And they stopped the show for about 20 minutes, at least 15, and got an ambulance there and carted him out. And that's why it got over so well. But it wasn't planned in the back. It just happened it just happened during the match. So I'm thinking, well, hell, but it was interesting, very, very interesting. And I used to make a point of this. I always made sure that I didn't want anybody, Lawler or Kaufman, to tell me what they were doing. I didn't want to know because I was a fan of it. But I didn't know. They didn't even know what they were going to do either, which even made it better. And the slap on the Letterman show, that wasn't planned either. They had talked about it, but never really solidified the thought or the act. And Lawler, when he reached over and slapped him, it popped everything. That was the best thing that helped wrestling in the 90s. I think that's when it was. No, when was it?
No, early 80s, like 82 or something.
I mean, that really put Memphis on the map. And I think it never left since then. But anyway, it made the top 50 moments or the top 100 moments. I think it made top 50 of television spots of all time.
Did you?
Bad.
How often did you sort of interact with Andy backstage? I mean, I know you didn't want to know what they were going to do when they got out there, but how was he to deal with personally?
He was okay, but he looked at us like stars. He wanted to be us. Hell, we wanted to be him. So, and he'd come back and he would sit there and he'd go, And Andy is not funny. He's the most non-funniest person I've ever. He was a performer. I made a mistake one time of calling him a comedian, and he went, "Oh no, Dutch, no, I am not a comedian." And I says, "I'm sorry, what are you?" He said, "I'm a sketch artist. I'm a performance artist. This is one of those." Which I found later that he meant he does things just to elicit a response from people. Now, some of his comedy monologues, they elicited a response, all right. People getting up and leaving. But see, he was so proud that he could get in the ring with thousands of people around. Thousands, not 100. Not 200, which is what the comedy clubs really held back in those days. That was the max. And I looked at him one night out in Memphis, and I said, that guy right there is the most unlikeliest candidate to ever headline a major arena in the United States of all time. He was 5'9", 165 pounds, maybe. I mean, pallid, white complexion, pimples, greasy hair, wearing like, I don't know, those long johns and shorts. Only one thing qualified him to headline a show. He sold 11,730 tickets. That's what qualified him to be in the main event on that show. But I learned something that day. So, but I've always booked along those lines too. Instead of planning everything so far in advance. Sometimes if you see something and how a crowd reacts, if you can book it on the spot for next week, do it. Because now you're booking it as hot as it can be booked. And you don't miss on it. See, if you plan something for weeks and weeks and weeks, and all of a sudden you get there and it goes, yeah, well, you're done. You might as well trash it all and start it over.
Did you and Jerry, when he started developing that cough, now I've seen, as you cough right there where I say that, when he started developing the cough, he would die of lung cancer in, I think, 84 or something like that. And obviously, wrestlers are going to be more conspiratorially minded than your average man in the street. Did anyone think he'd faked his own death at the time?
Well, no, that was an opinion. See, I got a call now. Now you got me thinking I'm going to die. But there is something to be thought about that, because Andy would do stuff like that. Andy was very notorious. So, but when he did the thing with Lawler, and I did this on the interview with Lawler one time, and I brought up that when he gave him the pile driver, he died about a year later. So when he gave him the pile driver, he already had cancer. Of course, Jerry tried to downplay it. Oh no, nobody knew it, and maybe nobody did know it. But he was sick, which kind of explains why he weighed 160 pounds, and he had that pallid white complexion. But it was a great angle, but nobody knew he was sick. But he had a girlfriend there, and before they could take him out, she got into the ambulance with him, and they took them both to the hospital. And he paid the hospital bill, and he stayed in the hospital for. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Amanda?
I'll pause this.
Yeah, and when he went to the hospital, and his neck, and he told him his neck, and he had x-rays and how had all these things done that he paid for. And he convinced the doctors down at, I don't know, St. Jude's, the big hospital in Memphis, but that's a children's hospital. He convinced those doctors that he had a neck injury, and I guess they kind of believed him. They kept him in the hospital for 3 days. And he sold an injury for 3 days in the hospital. That's what made it so believable. See, you don't act like you hurt somebody, then they go to the hospital and they let them out, let them go. By him laying there in a neck brace, and they put all that news out, and I think the worst thing they did is when they made the Man in the Moon movie, was actually let people in on it. Because I think a lot of people said, oh, please. There's no Santa Claus now. This is not real. Is there anything from my youth real? And I think the people felt deflated. Because, when I saw the movie, and the movie was okay, but when they let that out, I went, I don't think you should have ever done that. But I don't know how they could make it without it. I don't know. But if Andy had been alive, guess what? They would have kept it in, or he wouldn't have done the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. We will move on. We'll move on to our first question. And if you're wondering where these questions are coming from and how you can submit questions, you can't. I asked for questions 3-4 months ago for Dutch. I got over 100 back. And these are sort of remnants of those that I'm going to ask. But I will open questions up. I'll figure it out. You'll be the first to know anyway. The first question is, Bodie, how about his thoughts and opinions on the dark side of the ring? And what was it like to work with the producers? I mean, you were on screen and you also voiced over the first series, didn't you?
Yes, I did. They were really, really good. They really did. They really did their research on this. And they had some great stories. They did the research on that. Plus, I was there in the studio with them. And they say, well, how would this be said? And they gave me free rein. They said, no, say it like, that's the question, but say it like you would say it. So I would kind of throw that in there and keep it from being too stilted, I think. But they did a great job. They were great to work with. Plus, they're, heavy duty wrestling fans. And that's what you want to work with. Evan Husney and his friend Jason, can't quite remember the last name, but they had all this all this material they wanted to get in. And my job was easy. They'd just give me a line that was, they said, see if you can get it in 12 seconds. Okay, well, you got to read it in 12 seconds. I got it. And everything went smooth. And we did, I think I did the first one. I think we did 3. How many episodes were on the first season? 7, 6?
Something like that. I'll find out while you carry on.
Yeah, and the only one that I didn't voice over it was the Bruiser Brody one, but I was on that one. And they were asking me about, and I also, talking about Bruiser Brody, it's in this book that night in Puerto Rico, and it's heavily detailed, and there's still some doubt over what caused that, even today, even though the man that did it said he did it, but he claimed self-defense. And this is another thing about being in a foreign, it's not a foreign country, it's a commonwealth of the United States, Puerto Rico. But the jury were all wrestling fans too. And they all, and when I said really what killed Brody, the trial was, they were believers. They believed that Bruiser Brody was a big, crazy man. And one of the Puerto Rican citizens was afraid of him. And in that shower, he thought Brody was going to kill him, so he stabbed him. Which I think if you really, I don't know how they could get an acquittal. I thought that the worst they could have come up with was a hung jury. But they didn't. But back to Dark Side of the Ring. That was one of the stories, and of course the Owen Hart. And they had some great stories. So when I told Eben about his idea, because he called me about 2 years before they even started it, and told me what he wanted to do, and I said, "Brother, that's a great idea." He said it's going to be it's what do they call that when it's they have a word for it. It's the scenes it's depicted behind it. It's not the
well, almost like it's almost like a dream sequence version of things, isn't it?
Basically, and they did that. And I told him, I said, this is going to do well. He said, "How do you know that?" I said, "Well, I know wrestling fans." "You think it'll do well?" I said, "Yeah, I think it'll be probably." I mean, Vice is not NBC, you know, and it's not CNN, but the first season of Dark Side of the Ring had the highest ratings of anything they'd ever done. Viewership, the highest. And, you know, we were talking earlier, you talk about the British wrestling, why it was discontinued. It's because people thought it was lowbrow, low class. Well, the people at Vice thought the same thing, till they saw how people tuned into this and watched it. Because in a series like Dark Side of the Ring, you got new fans and you got your older fans. Plus, it was a true story that the people could believe in and look it up. And if you told your dad, say, "Hey, I saw this. You remember that?" "Oh, yeah, I remember that, this, that, and the other." So then he would start watching. So it was a very, very profitable and well-watched series. And I think what followed that was Dark Side of the Ring 2. I think it was even better than that. And I think they did a 3.
Yeah.
I got fired after 1 because I wasn't a Canadian citizen. They had to let me go. That's horrible when government gets in the way of you making money. But I enjoyed the show. I enjoy the way these guys put it together, and they did a great, great job.
Now, you can't speak to this, I suppose, firsthand, but Jim Ross recently said he was a bit unhappy with his portrayal on Dark Side. I think they basically took the most inflammatory comments that he may have made during an interview and then inserted it in, and he was unhappy. He came off very grumpy. But it's Jim Ross. He always comes off grumpy.
He's always grumpy. And then gets up in the morning, he's grumpy. You see him come in the restaurant, "How you doing, Jim?" "I'm all right." He's just a grumpy back. Jim is not overly friendly ever. But I think he thought some of his comments were taken in the wrong spirit. They didn't mean anything by him. He said them. And he sold his appearance on the show. That's what they wanted him to do. So they can't add to what he says. They can just put up. They can just show. Maybe it's the way they produced it. I don't know. But I heard he was upset. And even when I was there doing the territories, the new tape territories, he said it. So I don't know what to tell him. So I don't know what to tell him either. So what was he?
Oh, I don't know. I wrote this ages ago. I can't remember. I'll move on. Laron Jeremiah 2329. How was Dusty Rhodes outside the ring?
Oh, Dusty?
Yeah.
Oh, he's great. Dusty was okay outside the ring. I didn't spend a lot of time because he was mostly in Florida, and he was in Charlotte, Mid Atlantic, and he was the booker. I didn't spend a lot of time around him, but Dusty likes to hang out in the bars. I never was a bar guy hanging around in there, but he was good. He's friendly. If you had an idea, he'd listen to it. He always treated me well. I like Dusty.
Do you think if you were more of a drinker, you would have? Well, I suppose you would. You would have more opportunity.
I'd be world champion.
No, but I do think that sometimes, you know, the guys who are in the business that weren't partiers sort of were missing out on an opportunity to get themselves heard more.
They were. They really were. But I always said, well, if I got to go get drunk to get a push, I don't know if I want to get the push. But I don't know. Because some of those guys have good times, and you actually work with your friends. So if a guy kind of likes you in a bar atmosphere, and you're talking back and forth, and you give him an idea, then sometimes 2 beers works wonders. Makes those ideas really, really come out. And I never traveled with Dusty. That's another good spot you can work your stuff in if you're traveling with him. But I never traveled with Dusty. The only place I would really have access to him and on a social setting would be a bar, and I never was a bar guy.
With Dusty, was the lisp a work?
Beg your pardon?
Was the lisp a work? Did he not lisp outside of interviews?
I never heard it, really. I think, but when he did it in those interviews, it was perfect. I mean, he has done some legendary interviews. And this is what I'm saying about doing interviews. You talk about the writers in WWE. They couldn't write Dusty's interview. Dusty did that interview off the top of his head. And I guarantee you, a lot of those interviews, he's done 100 times driving down the road in his pickup truck. Because that's the time you do your interviews. And if you want to start talking, you start talking to yourself, going down the road. You look like a wild man, especially if somebody drives by you and you're talking to yourself. That's before cell phones. So who are you talking to? But his mannerisms and his way of delivery was pitch perfect. And it's like the name Dusty Rhodes has to match the character, the cowboy, the boots, the hat. Then Dusty, he would come out and he would bring up, he said, I don't have the most perfect body in the world, blah, blah, but I got heart. And he's talking about hard times. And Hard Times is one of his classic interviews that he did. I mean, you can't write that, but he made it up. And I was in Tampa with him, and come time for do an interview, and he said, all right, West Palm Beach, next Monday night, blah, blah, blah. And he would go out there and he'd do 2 minutes, like falling off like just sitting down in that chair, and he'd just roll out. And he'd have something funny to say at the end, and they'd be done. Nothing's worse than going in to do a set of interviews for a bunch of different towns and somebody keeps busting the interviews. Can't get it right. Can't get it right. Let me do it again. Let me do it again. No, go, please. I used to say, Dusty, please just tell her don't even do the interviews. I forgot he was busting them one day, but Jesse Barr, I think, he just couldn't get it right. He couldn't even get the town out. He would just get nervous, and I think Dusty finally said, just don't do it anymore. But Dusty, very, very, that was his strong suit, and the elbow. And of course, he didn't look like Mr. America. He didn't have to. I think we talked last week about people. It's not your wrestling. It's your connectivity to the people. If you have that chemistry where you touch them here, you touch them in the heart, you got them. You don't got to do nothing else. You just got to ride that wave, and that's magic. Mm-hmm. And I said last week, you can't manufacture it, you can't make it. You either got it or you don't got it.
I think it goes to show how professional you are that you said last week as well. It's great. I don't even attempt to make a play on that we're not recording two shows in a row.
Well, I do remember that sometimes we used to do two tapes, and you couldn't say earlier today. You couldn't say that. It had to be last week, because then you're out of sync. And somebody said, "Wait a minute, earlier today? What did they do today?" That confuses people. That's one thing you don't want to do. You don't want to confuse your audience, because that's bad.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are confused why I can't even get the words out. That's how bad I am at this. But I do my best anyway. I will move on. Sun View. Any memories of Jeff Gaylord? And I think that was his real name as well. I hope he didn't choose it.
That was it. Yeah.
From USWA. And was he an off-the-wall guy? And he later spent time in prison for bank robberies.
Well, Jeff wasn't, he wasn't a real smart guy. Jeff was a good guy, and he had a good body. But I remember one time he used to pop the pills. But so he was going to. I'm in Mid-South Coliseum, and I'm standing in the back, and I'm watching. Of course, this wasn't as endearing or as entertaining as watching Kaufman and Lawler. But I'm watching Jeff Gaylord and somebody, Billy Travis, or it could have been Jeff Jarrett, I don't know. So he wanted to get up there and jump off the top rope, like with a double axe handle, both hands come down and hit the guy. And he was waiting for it, and he was going outside of the ring, and he got up there on the top rope, and he was a little unsteady. He'd been taking some pills, and he got up there, and he went like this, and he went whoop, whoa, and fell off backwards. I damn near fell down. I was laughing so hard. He could have killed himself, but it was just. And he's kind of a tall guy. He's about 6'2", 6'3", maybe. And I saw him going, and all the crowd saw him going, and then bam! Oh my God, the whole place erupted. But it's not like being. They hope he got hurt or anything. It was just funny. I don't know why people laugh at that, but that was one of the stories that I remember about Jeff. And the bank robbery, I remember he did it, but I don't know where he did it. You remember?
I can look it up while you try and remember as well. Let me see. Here's what it says on Wikipedia. The always reliable Wikipedia. Gaylord robbed a bank in Aurora, Colorado for $5,000. Then in February, he robbed the same bank branch. This time, his license plate number was written down, and a high-speed car chase ensued, which resulted in Gaylord being taken into custody. Let's see how much he got. 2 consecutive terms of 78 months.
Oh, my God.
Oh, in 2009, he once again attempted a bank robbery in Monument, Colorado. He was released from prison in 2015.
Did I say that he wasn't too smart?
Sounds as thick as pig shit, this guy.
Oh, man. I don't know. I don't think anything's working up here. I really don't. There was one guy talking about bank robbers, and I don't remember exactly who he was. Something wants to say MVP. You remember MVP?
Yeah, didn't he? We went through this. He robbed a riverboat casino, didn't he?
That's what they say. Now, listen, where are you going to go if you rob the riverboat casino? Hey, it's on the river. Where are you going to go?
Well, I'm
You got to be
I'm
somewhere.
going to get him a pedalo and pedalo off.
But I don't know. I have met some real geniuses in the wrestling business, but Jeff Gaylord was he's not too far down that list.
Yeah. We'll move on. WPMP. Why wasn't the tag team of you and Bobby Jaggers, brackets Kansas Jayhawks, given a better push or at least a US tag title run?
Oh, I don't know. That's just one of those. They either put it on you or they don't. Because we went after I think the Khrushchevs, not the Khrushchevs, the Koloffs, Nikita and Nikolai. They had them at the time. And when you went into a match with those two guys, it's like a fight. I mean, that Ivan, he just eat you up. And of course, Nikolai was kind of green, and he'd eat you up too. Hell, it was a fight every night. We had decent matches, but I think they wanted to put it on us at one time, except for something. I think we got some brushback between Luger and Sting. They didn't like the idea for some reason. I don't know how that would affect them, but I don't know. So as far as the answer to that, I don't know. And I wish we had gotten the titles, at least for a little run, just to say we had them.
With because you mentioned him, and I've interviewed Nikita Koloff as well. What a nice man he is, and I hadn't realised that. I remember before we went on, and I said, "Do I call you Scott or Nikita, or how do you like?" I haven't been Scott since like 1991. So he did an Ultimate Warrior and changed his name legally, apparently.
So what was his name before?
I think it was something like Scott Sampson or something.
Something like that. But they had a little period in the wrestling business where all these guys that had been in the wrestling business all of a sudden became evangelists. Nikita became one. DiBiase became one.
Jake did.
I'll get to Jake in a minute. Tully did. Tully Blanchard and Jake the Snake. They all became evangelists, which got me to thinking. I said, wait a minute. Maybe this religious stuff, and you hear that as a kid too, when I grew up, it was all just a money-making operation. But I try not to believe that, because it is like, religion and God. And I'm thinking, somebody that would do that, I mean, that doesn't quite seem right. But I saw this movie one time, and you can still see it. It's called Marjo. You ever heard of it?
No.
If you want to be smartened up to the revival, evangelistic business, watch Marjo. Man, he'll smarten you right up. He'll tell you how it's done, how they do it, and because they have a formula too. And that's why I drew the connection between pro wrestling and evangelism. It's basically the same scam, except wrestling is more true to what we're trying to do than what evangelism is. See, we have a spectacle. We invite people and they come in. We try to get their money. We have music. We have superstars, except evangelism has God and Jesus Christ. We can't match that. and we take it from there. But the evangelists, they save people. I don't know if we save anybody, but there is a lot of similarities between pro wrestling and the evangelism endeavors.
With wrestlers turned evangelists, I suppose there's different degrees of how earnest they either come across or secretly are. And you know, if they're just in it for the money, if they truly buy into what they're saying. And then I said Jake, and you were around the WWF at the time when Jake returned, and when he was doing the preaching thing, all the way to the end when he left and the halo was slipping.
Oh my God. Well, I was in there and they had brought Jake back. And this is after they'd had all this trouble with him. And he got in a lot of trouble in Mexico about the drugs and this, that, and the other. And Jake is just, I mean, he's Jake. So I'm sitting on this stage in this some town. And it was before the show started. And Jake was sitting in a chair. And he had about 10 of the, we call enhancement talents. They were all sitting around him like little kids, like like around a fireplace. And they were listening to their grandfather tell these old road stories or whatever. And Jake was telling this story. And I think Swagger was with me. And I got a little closer because I got just a little bit of the story. And the story was that he was driving down through Interstate 75 and 85 in Atlanta, Georgia, in an open air convertible Corvette. 100 miles an hour, he said. So when I heard that, I said, I got to hear this story. So I got over there a little closer, and he said he had a prostitute with him that was in the passenger side. She was naked. Okay, now we got Jake. Everybody knows Jake driving down Interstate 75, 85, doing 100 miles an hour. Like, where are the police? And he's got this naked prostitute. Said she had a bottle, and she was doing things with the bottle. And he said he got past south of Atlanta, like around the airport. And these guys were just like, oh, God, what's this story? Just tell us what's this story, Jake. And he said all of a sudden something just told him to get off. So he almost locked it down and went to the top of the ramp. He said the police had it all cut off there. He said, oh, God, you'll get me now. And he said he had cocaine in the front. He had weed, and they had all kind of pills and stuff. So he said the cop recognized him and came up to the car, and he said, Jake, go. Get out of here now. Go, go, go. And he said the cop let him go. He just took off to the right, I guess. And I guess the story ended, or I quit listening at that point. And these people said, oh, wow, you got lucky. Yeah, well, they knew who I was or something. Oh, my God. But these guys were sitting around, and a big star was talking to them. So, of course, they're going to sit there and enjoy the story. I don't know how many believed it. I think they all believed it. Because why would they not believe it? Because Jake the Snake was telling them the story. And I'm sitting over there, and I said, I remember I leaned over to Bradshaw, and I went, man, I just heard the goddamnest story you ever heard. I'll tell you later. And I took him in the car that night. And I've seen Jake several times since then. I've never asked him that story, but something tells me he wouldn't remember it.
I thought you were going to say that he ended up stopping and the police let him through, and I thought you were going to say it was an act of God, that the policeman recognized him or something.
Well, I'm not that good at telling true stories, but they believed it. So, but it was a pretty interesting story. I mean, just to make up on the out of the clear blue.
Just quickly, just before, how do you rate Jake as a booker? Because I believe he started throwing in ideas around late 96 when you were managing Bradshaw.
Nah. Oh, here's another story. Bradshaw, he had a habit of just beating the shit out of people. I mean, he threw the book on finesse. He threw that out the door. So they had this kid in, I think, Quebec, and he was Joe LeDuc's nephew because he had the LeDuc name, which is a magic name in Quebec when it comes to wrestling. And they wanted Jake to beat with, they wanted Bradshaw to work with him. And he said, yeah, anything you want. And Bradshaw was going to give the kid something. He wasn't very big. And the kid caught a spot and forgot his own spot. That Swagger took over on him.
Bradshaw.
I'm sorry, I get them confused. Bradshaw took over on him and beat the living crap out of him. So, and the kid, we went to the back, and the kid's crying. And he said, what happened? He said, well, he's too rough. He's too rough. And so they put Jake with Bradshaw. And, Bradshaw's father is a minister. Remember I told you about Jake's religious affiliations?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Bradshaw didn't appreciate that too much, apparently, because they would go out night after night, and Bradshaw wouldn't ease up on him, and he was hitting him hard. And finally, Jake come to me one night, and he said, hey, man, you got to help me out here. I said, what? He said, tell him to ease up. I said, hey, Jake, let me tell you, you're the one that's getting the shit beat out of you, not me. I think it should be your spot to go and tell him, because he just beat him up. And I mean, I could hear their bodies. Sometimes he'd go give that clothesline. You could hear the bodies go, man, they would hit, and Jake would go down, and he would just pummel him. I mean, it was brutal. It was hard to watch it. Just standing, I'd go, God dang. Anyway, Bradshaw, he left the finesse book back in the dressing room.
We'll move on then. This might be the hardest question to answer. Joe Hillner, I'd love to hear Dutch's favourite Jim Cornette story. Well,
I read this yesterday, and I'm thinking I can't really decide. But, Jimmy I was with him in Smoky Mountain. Jimmy has high blood pressure, and he can't take pressure. I mean, when he takes pressure, he gets nervous and he gets irritable, very irritable. And we was at a Smoky Mountain taping one time, and I forgot what was going on, but Jimmy was having a tough day. He's almost like a mini Vince McMahon. It was GD this and GD that, and what the F. And finally, he told one guy that was just pulling the cables for the camera. He pulled something and hit Jimmy's leg, and Jimmy grabbed him and slammed him up against the lockers in the dressing room. I will beat the living shit out of you, you worthless mother. I had to pull him off. I said, Jimmy, stop. What are you doing? That son of a bitch, get him out of here. And he was actually, I think if I hadn't pulled him back, I think he would have maybe hit the guy or something. But Jimmy is very, very, and I heard he's better, then I heard he's worse. So I get these different reports on Jimmy, but he is very high strung at times. And Jimmy Cornette has 1,000 stories, and I could sit here and talk stories. Like he would start riots, and people would be. He had the Bruiser brothers there one time, and people got after Jimmy, and they were chasing Jimmy, and Jimmy's trying to hit them and run. And then they got close to the restroom. Then the Bruiser brothers started chasing them. They were chasing the people through the crowd, and Jimmy's in the back. It was a big, big mess. And there's a few gunshots in there too with Jimmy. And anyway.
Jim never carried a gun, though. I thought Dennis Condrey did at one point.
Jimmy's got a gun. Believe me. Jimmy, he couldn't travel around without protection. Now, he may not have had one in the early days, but I guarantee you he's got one now.
I will move on then. We should do a Jim Cornette story of the week, I think, at some point, maybe. Who knows? Larry Starstruck. Who did Dutch feel he had the best matches with?
Well, when I started, when I had a lot of energy, I had some great matches with, his name was Ted Oates. And I always give Ted Oates credit. And because he was such a smooth worker, he learned from the best. His brother-in-law was called Dickie Steinborn. He was a tremendous worker. Lied like a son of a bitch, but he was a great worker. And then and we more or less taught each other the ropes in the ring. I think 1 year I probably wrestled him 300 times in 1 year. So, and then my next one was Randy Savage. I was starting to try to get the hang of the techniques. I was trying to get the minor flaws out of a style. And then I learned, and everybody I worked with, I learned from. Not necessarily that they taught me, I just learned from them. With Savage, I learned that he was wide open. He was 100 miles an hour, 100% of the time. And if you left and I've said this before in interviews, if you left your aggression back in the dressing room, he just beat the shit out of it. I mean, he dropped those elbows, and I mean, he's knocked me out with it, dropping those elbows. And I used to wonder, how is he knocking me out? Because he'd get on that second rope or whatever, he'd get on top rope and he'd come off. But when he'd hit me, the impact of the body would make it go down a little bit, the ring. And then my head would go up. And then all of a sudden the mat's coming up, my head's going back. And that would knock me out. But I had some great matches with him. Another one I had great matches with was Lawler. And the thing with Lawler, you don't got to worry about Lawler. I mean, he doesn't do a lot of things, but what he does is never wasted movement. Never. And actually with Jake, I learned a lot with Jake too. Because you remember the short clothesline he used to do?
Yeah.
I was in Fort Worth, Texas. When I first went to Texas. And I worked with him in the first match one night. And I gave him the short clothesline. People popped. They didn't know me. They knew Jake, but they didn't know me. And he loved it. And we came back to the dressing room and he said, "Hey, man, you know that voice he's got? But you're talking to Jake." He said, "I love that move, man." But he didn't say nothing about stealing it. So he stole it. And the next time I saw it, he was on WWF with that clothesline. Somebody said, "Hey, you do the same clothesline as Jake does, don't you?" I said, "No, Jake does the same clothesline I do because he stole it, but I didn't have any kind of copyright on it." So, and he did it good too. He did it very good.
I've got a question that we can finish off on. We're a couple of questions away from that, but it involves Randy Savage, and you're probably going to know where I'm going to go with it quite soon. But we'll ask a couple more before we get to that. Ibzan Arroyo, did you get any real heat in public places the first year you did the gimmick with Jack Swagger?
Are you kidding? My God, did I get heat? Where I got the most heat, and I may have told this story here too, because I was all about the immigration, and I was all about the little figures sneaking across the border. Vince loved that, by the way. And so when I went down to South Texas, have I told you this?
No.
Oh, WWE fans never really get violent, usually. brother, when I was down on that border, we were right on the border. So there was a lot of Mexicans in there. And a lot of Mexicans from Mexico. They would come across and come to the show. Well, there was a couple of them out there. They said that we're gonna beat the living shit out of you, and it was getting closer. And I started to move away from them, and I'm thinking, where's my security? So I go to the back, and there's my security guy standing there. I said, "Where you been, man?" And he said, "I've been here and why?" I said, "What when you out on the floor with me?" He said, "No, you don't need it." And I said, "Are you shitting me?" I said, "Man, I'm telling you what," and you never see fans like that till they show up. And they showed up. I said, had a guy, he was coming over that rail at me, seriously. And I said, let me tell you one thing. If he comes over the rail or anybody on this little run here attacks me, your ass is going to get fired because I'm going to demand it. You're supposed to be out there with me. And he was a good guy. I wasn't mad at him, but he was so attuned to, this, that, and the other, and, fans just being fans. So he went out with me on the next night, and they were worse than the first night. And he came up to me. He said, "Well, you wasn't bullshitting." He said, "They're buying that. They're buying that gimmick." And then people used to look at me and they say, "We really like that gimmick." Like, is it really a gimmick? Because a lot of people actually thought I believed that way. But I could believe that way, but I didn't. But I was only doing what they told me to do, but I was doing it so well, the people believed it. That's back in tune to if you catch them in that zone of, is this real or is it not? And I caught them in it. But the thing about that gimmick is people believed it in a good way too. Because half the people liked it. Half the people wanted to strangle me. So, but they became a point later on where they wanted to actually get a little more racist with it. And I didn't want to do it. And I kept arguing. I said, "Guys, this is not what I do." I said, "If you want me to, where's the heat in being a racist? There's no heat there. It's turn away. I don't want you around. But if you're talking like immigrants, that's a little different." And even Bradshaw told him, he said, "Man, y'all gonna kill him." So I went out to one night and I said something to two black guys that I didn't want to say. And then I knew as soon as I said it, and shouldn't have said that, because there was no positivity in the message. I mean, you can actually be negative and people could still like it, but not with that. So I got to the back, and it was Triple H who told me, "Well, say it. If it doesn't work, we'll take it out." So he caught me in the back. He said, "How'd they take it?" I said, "Brother, take that out." He said, "Let's go." So it never made the air, but it would have really, really actually hurt the show and hurt me. So I don't know. I mean, I'm already doing a half gimmick with the Hispanics anyway. So, but to do it why not just hate everybody? You can't do that. You got to have some people you like. But anyway, I didn't do it. I'm glad I didn't do it. And he took it out. He did what he said he'd do. So.
Just very quickly, you mentioned security for you. Was this WWE Security just the head of security for them, or were you assigned somebody because they thought the audience might get a bit testy?
No, it was WWE Security, but the guy was he was a 20-year or 25-year military guy that was in like the MPs or some kind of security, and he got a job with them. And I think he lived in Paducah, Kentucky. And he would fly either out of Louisville or out of Nashville. And he was good, very good. Sometimes they had me do a deal where I had to do some kind of report, and I had to do fingerprints. For what reason, I don't know. But he took me in the back and he fingerprinted me, and I don't even know what it was for. I mean, sometimes WWE, they ask you to do things you don't know why you're doing them, but I did it. So who knows? Who knows what files the government has on you?
I'll ask one more, and then we'll do the finale story that I know for a fact that you've got a good story on. And the last question, Fargo Struts. Of all people called Fargo Struts, he's asking you what you thought of the Fabulous Ones.
Interesting question. Steve Kern, Stan Lane, alone as individuals in Memphis, and I heard this directly from Jerry Jarrett, they couldn't draw any money. They were two good-looking guys, good bodies. But if you put them alone, they were no magic. I'm a big talker about magic. So he says, what if I put them together? And this was Jerry Jarrett's idea. He said, let me put them together and have Jackie Fargo sponsor them first week or two and make them like the Fabulous Ones. They drew money like they were printing it. I mean, they were having just off their gimmicks. They were doing $2,000 and $3,000 weeks just off their gimmicks, not counting to what they made wrestling. So they drew a lot of money with the sheep herders and a lot of money with Coco Ware and Bobby Eaton. And I forgot the other team that was in there. I mean, and they were hot because, see, the older women liked them and the young girls liked them. And the boys, they wanted to be them. They emulated them. So, and anytime you went to a show with, it'd be me and Lawler and the Fabulous Ones, it was a sellout, especially a spot show, because that's like the carnival coming to town. So people would turn out for it. And they were some great, great houses. See, some of those buildings, those gymnasiums, seat 3,000 people. And we put 3,000 people in there, falling off a log.
Did you notice when you're in Memphis and the Fabulous Ones catch on, can you see a shift in the ratio between men and women? More women than men catching up?
Well, see, why ECW I don't think got any bigger than they did? Because no women went. It was all guys. And the women didn't want to go. And you know why they didn't want to go?
It's too violent.
Too bloody. There was nothing to enjoy. They all looked like they're damn drug addicts out there in the ring, but there was nothing for kids and there was nothing for the women. So if you don't have anything for the girls, you look at WWE now, half of them are women and they're enjoying the show. So when you would go to a show with the with the Fabs on it, a lot of women, and they would all go over there, have their picture made, take a picture, and they would sign the autograph. That's where they made the $2,000 or $3,000 weeks. This was when the gimmicks were like $1 a piece, or no more than $2. I was selling a lot of pictures in a week's time.
Do you remember looking at some of the glamour shots of the Fabulous Ones, and you must have looked at them and gone, Jesus, tap dancing Christ, that's the worst one yet. They were just wearing the skimpiest of outfits. Well,
Memphis has always been ahead of its time anyway, because the first one I saw like that was Lawler. Lawler's there, and he just had a towel in front of him, like in the dressing room. It sold like hotcakes. And then Dundee laying there, and he was laying down and just a towel over him. I'm like, what the hell? But it sold. So who am I to say that there was a market for it? They realized the market for it, so they capitalized on it, made a lot of money. And then the Fabs come out there, and I mean, and that's Rock and Roll Express, but they never They never did any towels in front of them. I think they were too modest for that. And then, of course, they had another team. It was Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers, the Fantastics. And they had like a bevy. You like that word, bevy? They had a bevy of teams that just did the sex appeal shots. And they all did well.
Were you ever talked into doing one?
Well, kind of, but I declined.
Right, we've got a couple of minutes left on the on this podcast, so I thought I'd ask. And I heard you talk about it once before, and it's always the most entertaining of stories. Randy Savage and the Waffle House knife fight.
Well, when I first met Randy, we were working for Nick Goulas, which is, and that was where Jerry Jarrett broke away from that to start his Memphis promotion. So, and it ran on Wednesday nights. So on a Wednesday night, Randy Savage was hungry, and him and the Disco Inferno, not Disco Inferno, Disco something, but which was Rip Rogers. They went down to the Waffle House, and the story is in my book, by the way, that you can find at Amazon.
Links will be in the description.
Okay. So they were sitting down, and Savage was, I think they'd done a joint or two or something. Savage wasn't too much of a drinker, but he did smoke the hemp. He wouldn't do that. So he's sitting down, he's trying to order, and this waitress come up, and this guy busted through the door. And later on, we found out that he worked on the day shift at the Waffle House, so everybody knew it. And there was nobody really customers in the Waffle House at the time, but all the staff knew him. And he said, "Hey, everybody, guess what?" They said, "What, Jimmy, what?" He said, "I'm going to get married." And they went, "Oh, my God." And the woman that was taking Savage's order, she left and went around the counter and hugged him. I think he had his wife with him, future wife with him. Well, Savage was hungry, and that pissed him off. And oh my God. So the guy started talking, and Savage couldn't leave it alone. So when the woman went back to take the rest of Savage's order, Savage says, "Who gives a shit?" Well, it was kind of quiet in there. And the guy, now he's embarrassed the guy in front of his future wife. The guy said, "You better give a shit." I said, "Well, I don't." He said, "Well, we got a problem." And Savage stood up. He said, "Well, I don't know. Do we?" I can see it as clear as day. And then the guy got up close to Savage. And you've been to Waffle House.
I've not. I've been to New York a couple of times where they don't have Waffle House, but no.
But they don't have houses there. Oh, it's down south. You'll eat up with them. They usually have what's it called, a jukebox that you used to put money in to play music. And they just started fighting. But it wasn't fighting, and Savage is half messed up anyway. So they go on the floor, and they scuffling around, I call it. And somebody calls the police, and Rip Rogers runs out of the place. And while this is going on, the guy stands up and pulls a knife and opens the knife up. And Savage sees that. Well, he don't have a knife, but he can get one. So he jumped over the counter, the little partition, and grabbed a knife. Now come back, and they're like in the seats, the table there, and the two seats that face you, they're like this. They're trying to not do a Zorro, I guess. I don't know. They're trying to cut each other. And Savage said he looked down, and he had a butter knife. And then he heard the sirens coming, wow, wow, wow. Well, the little guy that was going to get married, he took off. Now, in come the police. Whoa! They run in there, and they see Savage. He's up, and he's still standing in the booth. And a couple of them had worked the matches that night down at the Fairgrounds Arena. And then they went to work the night shift. And they knew Randy. And they said, "Randy, calm down. calm down. No, man, you're letting him get away, man. You let him get away. He wouldn't calm down. So finally some more came, and Randy wouldn't calm down. They wanted to talk to him, but he wouldn't. And finally the sergeant says, all right, he said, cuff him. They go to cuff him, and they have clubs. And Savage, he won't work with them, and he's not hitting them, but he wouldn't let them put the cuffs on. So they start hitting him with the clubs, but he's ducking his head. And then one went to hit him, and Savage moved. He hit the other cop. God, and now he went down. And finally, somebody said, get the dog. And the dog was in one of the cars out there. And they brought the dog in. Big old German Shepherd. And I forgot his name. I remember the name a couple of years ago. And they said, Randy, stop. Are we going to turn the dog loose? I don't give a shit, man. I hate that dog. He hated everybody. So they turned that dog loose. But before he got there, Randy gave him a good kick. That just made that dog matter. And he took a bite out of Randy's butt. They had to pull him off. Now they got him down. They handcuffed him and took him to jail. So I saw him that Saturday night in Chattanooga. This is Wednesday. I didn't see him Thursday, Friday. Saturday night, I saw him in Chattanooga. And I asked him, and because I'd read about it in the paper the next day. I pulled it up, and he said, oh, wrestler has a fight with something down at Waffle House. It says, Randy Savage wasn't pleased with his DQ match or something with Dutch Mantell at the Fairgrounds Arena last night. Actually, he went out and had some more fighting to do or something. And he had explained the whole deal. I said, what happened? He said, and then he told me the whole story, just like I've described here. So, and he said he went to court, and they made bail because the promoter in the town knew the police well, and they let Randy out. But I don't think he was ever charged with that. But I think it's one of the damnedest stories I ever heard Savage was in. But he wouldn't even leave that alone. After they came out with the story that he got arrested, he came out with his story. He called the paper up, said, listen, I'm going to give you my side. There's two sides to everything. And they came out, interviewed him, and then his story ran in the Sunday paper. So now it's getting more press than what it really deserved. But Savage was smart. He put the cops over in his, and he said, yeah, I was maybe a little high-strung and Dutch Mantell or whatever. But I think at the end they let it go. I think the promoter just made some kind of donation to the damn police fund or something, and they just took it off the docket.
I have two quick follow-up questions. One, shouldn't weed calm anybody down, apart from maybe Randy Savage? And two, where was Rip Rogers in all of this? Was he just as a bystander, just staring?
He was outside. See, the Waffle House, if you know the way the building is built, it's floor to, it's glass windows, floor to ceiling. And the parking lot's out there. You see clearly. Everybody that's in there, everybody's in the parking lot. Well, there was a crowd assembled out there, and they were watching this ass kicking. It went on for about 15 minutes. And the crowd was gathered. Oh, I got that. Oh, my God, this is what's going on. Nobody would go in there. But the crowd was saying, what a hell of a show they got. Then the dog bit him, and where else are you going to see that? I mean, in Nashville, Tennessee, outside of Waffle House at like 1 o'clock in the morning. You can see stuff like that. And Rip was outside. And, I don't ever think that Randy forgave him for leaving him. He didn't say anything about it, but they had some trouble later on. And I think that was one of the basic reasons they fell apart. I think they may have made up at the end, but I'm not sure.
Well, if I ever get to interview Rip Rogers, that'll be the first thing I'll ask him is...
Yeah, he'll tell you.
But for now, I'll wrap this podcast up. Thank you very much for watching. We will see you again next week. And thank you, Dutch, for giving us... You're going to have to do very well to top that last story.
Oh, well, I will think Savage has got others. Savage has one with Bill Dundee, I'll tell coming up. That was a good one. And plus, he's got one at a strip club in Nashville where he almost got shot. He's got that one, and he was just too much. I love Randy, but I said, so Randy, man, you wouldn't have to alter your behavior. You're down south now. People will put up with it. Oh, shit. And he didn't. So we'll save that for next week.
There you go. What more of a tease can you possibly ask for? Thank you, Dutch. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks.